Like you guys know about gluten, right?
Right.
So gluten is the most well-known of all lectins. Lectins are the chemical shield that the plants use. So there's literally hundreds of these compounds.
We are back on the zoo, and we have a very special guest who's actually a good friend of mine, Rich Pauwels. But I know him, and he's on my phone as Rich Nuts because that's what he has. He has some of the best nuts in the market.
Hey.
That's what Give it up for Rich.
Thank you.
They're not just rich as nuts, but they're rich. They're rich in nutrients. They're rich in all these things. So before we get into what's so amazing about your nuts, and we're gonna have the double entendre happening the entire time. It's fine. He's wearing a kilt and everything. Yeah. What got you to start a company like this?
Well, interestingly enough, so I worked for 20 years as a paramedic and firefighter. And during that time, like as you guys can imagine, you see these brush fires happening out there, right? You're out in the middle of the wilderness and there's no food, right? There's like prison sack lunches, MREs, and sometimes fast food. So, but you're working really hard, so you definitely need the energy to go out there and fight those fires. So what I would do is I would carry like a bag of raw cashews, and I might eat like a pound of cashews during the fire, you know, because you could be out there 6, 8, 10 hours, really busting your butt, getting it done. And instead of getting the energy I needed, like the proteins and fats, I was thinking they're going to give me like the strength to fight the fire. Instead, I would get like gassy and bloated.
Fighting the fire.
And I'm like, great, I'm going to like
no.
explode or something, right?
Yeah.
So then I did a bunch of research and I realized that if you're eating raw nuts without sprouting them first, they could give you symptom X, Y, and Z, all of which I had.
Oh, wow.
Because like basically the plants want the nuts or seeds to survive our digestive tract and grow into a new plant, right? That's how nature created it, right? So that's their survival strategy. So once I found out about the sprouting, I started soaking them in water before to activate them, allowing them to germinate, and then my digestive issues went away, which is great. Then the only problem I had was after you sprout them, they're really kind of mushy and soggy, so I didn't really like the texture, and they get moldy really fast when they're that moist. So the next step in the evolution of the product was I started dehydrating them, and that brought back the crunch, locked in the flavor, and then it actually preserved them naturally. So that's how I came up with Rich Nuts, you know, basically on the fire line, not on the fire line, but for firefighting. You know?
And now this is your full-time thing. You're not a firefighter anymore. You're dedicated to the nuts.
Right, yeah.
What makes nuts so nutritious? Once you sprout them and once you do your whole process, what makes nuts such a superfood?
Yeah, so once you activate them through the sprouting process and germination, and that's just the natural process of growth, right? So like if you plant a seed in the ground and it grows into something, when it goes from that shielded, protected nut or seed into a growth phase, it drops its defenses, and then it becomes more digestible and therefore more nutritious. So that's when the bioavailability of the nutrients spikes. See, they put these chemical shields, essentially, it's called like phytic acid and lectins, which are by design block, inhibit, and disrupt our digestion, allowing the nut or seed to pass through us. So when
it will survive the digestion tract.
That's the whole strategy, right? Like plants eat, you know, stuff and then they go drop it out the backside somewhere else, and then it grows into the new plant. So that shield. So what really makes them more nutritious is the sprouting process. And somehow it changes the texture in a way, like I don't know how to explain it. I'm still trying to articulate this part, but it makes them lighter and crunchier. And I know if you eat like raw cashews now, if I eat raw cashews, I've noticed they're really waxy and kind of not that great. But if you eat these, you're like, oh wow, they're so light and digestible, and then you don't get the stomach upset and stuff that people that know it's pretty common. So
I mean, it's a good thing you figured that out, because it must be horrible to get the runs in the middle of a forest fire.
Yeah, fortunately I didn't ever have diarrhea, but I did get gassy and bloaty and stuff. Yeah, and brain fog too, which is also a part of it. And it's really the lectins. So like you guys know about gluten, right? Right. So gluten is the most well-known of all lectins. Lectins are the chemical shield that the plants use. So there's literally hundreds of these compounds, and they all have slightly different effects, but generally their purpose is to shield the nut or seed, even grains, so that it can pass through us.
Wow.
So yeah.
Anna Karen,
insane.
What do you think?
I don't know, but you know how like, I don't know, here in LA, they'll be like, people have such specific diets or whatever, the gluten-free diet. But in fact, foods are not made for us to eat, or like, I don't know, the FDA doesn't really do what it should. So I just think it's so interesting that, you created this product, but if you didn't, we're out here eating, you know, getting bloated on the daily. I know I do. That's why I wear a dress. You know what I mean? But it makes sense. Why wouldn't we be given this to begin with, you know?
Well, it takes more love and care. Like, talk to us about like how you source a lot of the products that you put.
Yeah, so basically, why are rich nuts the best nuts, right? What makes it,
Why
what
are your
separates
nuts
them?
the
Rich.
richest?
Go
Yeah,
ahead
why
and
are
make
my
a
nuts
joke
the best?
left and right. He gets it all the time.
I'll tell you.
I've tried a lot of nuts. What makes yours the richest?
Yeah, well, number one, the sourcing is very important. So like right now, we source everything organically, but the real goal is, so like the secret, I'm gonna let you guys know, my ikigai, my reason for being is to connect people back to nature. Because here's the thing, all of us, like we live in this world where we have all kinds of massive problems happening. And we run around, we travel around in machines and we live in a box. We're pretending we're not animals, but at our heart, we're all animals. So like, how do we connect back to nature? And this is a way to do it through your food source, because every day you eat food, and where does it come from? And how is it processed? What is happening behind it? What are the implications of the way it's produced? You know, a lot of us are opposed to factory farming. Most of the vegans I know, they're more opposed to the way the animals are treated and all of that stuff. That's why they don't do it, and also the impact on the planet. So my whole plan with this company is to make us completely regeneratively sourced. So regenerative is like a level above organic in that the soil becomes very nutritious, and they focus on the health of the soil, and that creates 3 to 5 times more carbon sequestration per square acre. So you sequester more carbon, and then you get 30% more nutritious food. So right now we're only using one regenerative product, and that's the maple syrup and the maple pecan flavor. But the goal is to get everything to be regeneratively sourced. And so number one, ingredients. Number two, the sprouting process, which is a simple, natural process. The dehydration, which is also gentle. It's not like roasting, where you're roasting with oils at high heat. So basically, we roast at low temperature, which dries them out, preserves them naturally. So all of our products, maybe they have 4, 5, 7 ingredients, but there's nothing confusing or nothing you can't pronounce, like a bunch of weird preservatives and stuff like that. All these artificial ingredients. So ours are all very simple, and they're all like the most complex thing are the curry cashew, which have multiple spices in them.
And we'll get into the curry because that's one of my favorites. So we're gonna take a break. When we come back, let's go over some of the flavors, because I think that you really hit a good balance with the different flavors that you offer. We'll be right back with Rich right here on The Zoo. We are back with Rich, the man behind Rich Nuts. So you got a bunch of awesome flavors. So I know you brought the curry one is a big fan favorite.
Have
right?
you tried all of them?
I've tried them all. Yeah, I've gotten variety packs.
Nice.
Then there's the sage. Did you bring the sage?
Sage and rosemary.
Savory
That's the
sage.
one that it's when you first eat it, you're like, I haven't tried a flavor like that.
That called to me.
Well, you posed
Go
the
ahead.
product.
Yeah,
Like
you guys
Vanna.
can try. You guys can try some.
Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
okay.
And then he has.
I want to know, have you ever done any modeling?
I fooled around with it a little bit.
Because I think you need to call the firefighters and
When I
forget
was
like the firefighter calendar. I think you need to have like a nuts catalog. These things will really sell.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you buy? I would.
Yeah.
Tell
Not
us
the
about
first customer.
the maple. What do we have
Maple
here?
pecan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the sage and rosemary that they're trying now. This is our most, I would say, mild flavor.
Very
It's sage and rosemary, and it was the original one that I started making. I had sage and rosemary growing on my land in Topanga, so I just tried that one first.
That has Topanga sage.
And no, not any longer.
Not any
but
longer. Okay.
There wasn't enough growing there to
Oh my
produce
God.
it, you know? But maple pecan is probably our #1 seller
Yeah,
because it
everybody
has
loves that
maple syrup and vanilla.
And
so.
it's just sweet enough. It's not too sweet. You wanted to show us something with, oh, by the way, the sage thing, I always tell you, and don't take this the wrong way, it's an acquired taste, but you acquire that taste really quick. It's
Yeah.
2 handfuls. The first handful is like, oh, okay, this is a different, the sage and the nuts is not something that you're used to,
Yeah.
right? But by the second handful, you're like, all right, I want a whole bag.
Yeah.
It's so earthy. It feels good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's light and natural.
Yeah.
Tell us the story behind the QR code on the back of it, because
The QR code, yeah.
You're going to bring up a subject that I bring up all the time, and people get mad at me here when I bring it
I
up.
don't know where we can maybe zoom in on it.
Yeah.
It's really kind of small. And I don't know, do you guys do like clips later? Like we can add some
Yeah.
links in? So we can add that in a link. But basically, you scan this QR code, and here, so this is the crazy part. I had this, I've done ayahuasca many, many times, and it's really helped me develop myself as a person. But in one of the ceremonies, I was like, wow, how are we gonna make the business run and all this stuff? And I just had this vision of someone pointing their phone at the package, and then it just came up on the screen like, okay, these pecans were grown in Georgia by this person. Here's them farming them. Here's the process of it. Here's the maple syrup and where it comes from and how it's processed and how it's collected. Because for me, I'm totally into that stuff, and I figure if I'm into it, there's got to be other people that want to know where their food comes from, because it's important. Like, you want to know what you're eating, right? So I had that vision, and then I got a little stressed out after the ceremony because I was like, man, how am I going to start this whole new technological thing and like make an app or whatever? And I just was like, okay, I'm just going to set this aside and not worry about it. And about 3 months later, we met this group called the Producers Market. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were building that technology. And we had some conversations with them. And they're like, we'd like you to be in our pilot program. And we're already doing this. And we would just have to put the story together and then create it. It's called Storybird. And that's what the QR code is all about. So it was cool because like that's like the power of manifesting, where you don't actually have to do all the work to make it happen. You just have to meet the right people. And boom, you're in the pilot program. So.
Speaking of now, pivoting a little bit away into how we met, I was telling them, I think we met at Lightning in the Bottle, right?
Yeah.
So, we travel in the same kind of burner community, spiritual, kind of, ravers who haven't grown up yet kind of thing, but are finding some sort of spiritual path.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
And he's someone who a lot of people in the scene know and appreciate, you and your lovely wife, Samantha Pele. Is it Pele Bunny or
Divine Goddess Pele?
Divine Goddess Pele.
Yeah.
Hope she sees this. Just tell me about existing in that community, kind of coming of age in that community. You mentioned doing ayahuasca, so obviously the spiritual component of being in that community, and how that kind of has influenced you to do something like this.
Yeah, it really has, because it's really about finding your ikigai, right? That's like a Japanese term, which is about your reason for being, right? Where your passion, your purpose, your mission, and your vocation all come together. And while I was a firefighter, I loved it, and I was really good at it, and it was actually pretty easy for me, to be honest. It's not that way for everyone, and it's not always easy, but overall, it was pretty easy. Like, this business is driving me to grow in new ways, because I'm stepping into a whole new thing. Being an entrepreneur is like no safety net, no team, like you have to build all that stuff. So it's a lot more intense for me, but part of the process of finding out more who I am and to becoming more of my true self, this business has really like pushed me into doing that, because now I'm like obviously the ambassador of the product, like the biggest ambassador. So I go around and I do talks at Lightning in a Bottle. I teach a workshop.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when we met. I was teaching a workshop, and then we're selling nuts, and we also created this game, which was really fun. It's called.
Bruno was there, by the way.
Yeah, Bruno was there. That's right. Yeah.
What's the game called?
It's called Get Rich Nuts.
Okay.
So have you been to Lightning in a Bottle?
No, I haven't.
Or
but
any of those
told me.
festivals? It's
No.
really fun.
Okay.
So they have these things called hippie sticks or totems. And it's basically like, people will make these tall sticks with like different things on them. It could be a bunny rabbit or an octopus or whatever, or some weird saying. And basically the kids use it to kind of, when they're out in the crowd, there's 20,000 people. If you go to the bathroom, you might not ever see your friends again.
Group.
Yeah, and so you can see your group. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I saw it all around. And so I just threw one together with some stuff I had in my bus, my RV. And it said Get Rich Nuts on it. And basically anyone that found me won a free bag of nuts.
Oh, dope.
Wow. Yeah, it was cool. And then I got to write, I had these like feathers. It was like, looked like a dream catcher. And so they also got to write a wish for peace and hang it in the dream catcher. So by the end, I had 11 feathers hanging in the dream catcher. It was flashing Get Rich Nuts. We had 11 winners.
That's dope.
Rich, we got
really fun.
2 minutes left. I wanted you to tell the story, because I want to tell, you actually have some Mexican heritage.
I do.
So talk to us. You got to give us a 2-minute version of how that part of the family came to the United States and how that's influenced you.
Okay. Well, my grandmother was Mexican, and she always would tell me, I was born in Arizona. So, the border crossed us, essentially. But so my grandmother was Mexican. I grew up in Pico Rivera, which is about 15 miles from here. It's in the suburbs on the east side of LA. And the crazy thing is, this is the part I was going to share with you that's really interesting, is that I actually was born in prison. So my parents were heroin addicts, and I was actually born in prison. So luckily, my dad was able to kick the habit, and so I grew up with my dad in Pico Rivera. And, it's a Latino neighborhood. Then we moved out to Diamond Bar when I was in high school, but so that's my Latin connection. I'm from Los Angeles, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay here. We'll see. the nut business might be taking me to Alabama because we're in the process of scaling up for larger and larger production. So
Your nuts are going nationwide.
There
we
you
are
go.
going
It's a
nationwide.
good problem to have.
Yeah.
And where can people order the nuts? We'll put the link below, but do you want to go ahead and just say it?
Yeah, richnuts.com. You can also get them on Amazon.
Nuts that
Awesome.
are rich.
Yeah. Super delicious. Everything is all natural and pure. And
it's
yeah.
amazing, man. Dude, I'm glad you got to come here and share your story. And if you go to Alabama, I'm gonna come stay with you for a week. I'll do some work. I
Yeah,
promise.
sure.
I'll go over there. Whatever. How do you pick nuts out of the ground? How does it even work? Do they come from a tree? Where do nuts come from?
Yeah. Where do they come from?
Yeah.
They come from,
Quick answer. Is it trees? Is it plants?
they come from trees, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, everybody, get your rich nuts. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we have more right here on The Zoo.